Right, so in PMQs yesterday, Keir Starmer laid into Rishi Sunak over his appointment of Private Pike-alike Gavin Williamson. The litany of bullying allegations against Parliament's own stupid boy is long and established, from using a tarantula for intimidation purposes to knowing where all the bodies are buried within his party, of course, to lean on people, right up to those horrendous texts aimed at Wendy Morton, culminating in sufficient pressure to force Williamson to resign. The third time he has left government in disgrace. It really ought to be the last. A bully that likes to intimidate and throw his weight around isn't somebody that should be anywhere near the reins of power. And of course, Starmer had a field day with it. Why wouldn't he? Had Sunak on the ropes over his weakness for not actually sacking Williamson, for his weakness in appointing him to start with to hold his shambles of a Tory party together. Starmer called Williamson a sad middle manager, getting off on intimidating those beneath him. The truth is simple. He's a pathetic bully, but he would never get away with it if people like the Prime Minister didn't hand him power. You really can't argue with that as much as you really want to when it comes to Keir Starmer. But that brings me to this clip of what happened immediately after PMQ's finished.
The first statement, Prime Minister, COP27.
With permission, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to make a statement on COP27.
Prime Minister, points of orders come after the statements. Sorry, Prime Minister.
I'm
glad you're back. Sorry? What's he saying? It can't relate to the PMQs. You didn't ask a question. We'll deal with it afterwards. Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
That comment towards Jeremy Corbyn, referring to him as senile, came from Wes Streeting, the Shadow Secretary of State for Health and Social Care. The guy Starmer has put in charge of mental health, making a mental health slur against the former leader of his own party. Lindsay Hoyle is right that points of order come after statements, but if he was paying any bloody attention, useless as he is, he would have taken the point of order before calling on Sunak to make his statement on COP27, since it related to Sunak again using Corbyn as a punching bag for the third week in a row during his responses to Prime Minister's questions, without offering the courtesy, as is convention, of letting him know he'd be brought up. Sunak again laughed it off. Little wonder he had Williamson's back until Williamson finally took himself out of the equation, really, is it? But back to Starmer and Wes Streeting, because here we have the guy Starmer would put in charge of health, one of his most sycophantic loyalists, a right-winger who has always detested Jeremy Corbyn, and who is no stranger to using mental health slurs, even before this, as his casual use of terms like mad and moron attest to. He's also no stranger to abusiveness in person, as the allegations of him screaming in Diane Abbott's face, which he's never been held to account over, have stood up to scrutiny. He hasn't put out a public apology about his ableist antics yesterday. He has instead doubled down, it seems, as in a reply to a tweet by Owen Jones, he mentioned he'd sent Jeremy a note of apology and claimed he'd said it in jest. So mental health issues are now a laughing matter for this man, apparently, though I must have missed the mirth on your face in that video clip, Wesley. I wonder, as someone who has recovered from cancer, if you'd find somebody making jokes about that disease as funny as you think mental health is. Corbyn, incidentally, has called on Streeting to apologise to all people affected by dementia. Such is the measure of the man. That Streeting has not done so speaks volumes of the measure of him. Dementia, including Alzheimer's, is now the biggest killer in the UK. It's overtaken heart disease, and this has been the case since 2016. Some 900,000 people suffer from it in the UK today. It kills tens of thousands of people every year. And I suppose you don't really think of things like dementia as being killers in and of themselves. You think of them as a terrible decline in mental capacity, perhaps. But if you think about it, nobody ever actually recovers from a dementia diagnosis. Nobody ever gets better from it. And other health issues lead up to it. So yes, it is a killer. It's not a punchline, as Streeting has inferred he thinks it is. He has rightfully been panned for it, and calls for his sacking have come thick and fast across social media. And why not? Because the shoe is now on the other foot, isn't it? When Starmer was calling Sunak a sad middle manager too weak to sack a bully, I was sat there thinking pot, kettle and black. Starmer has so far not said a thing about this, hasn't acted to censure his shadow health secretary, and it's to nobody's surprise whatsoever, since Streeting is such an ardent loyalist. Even when Starmer had been slammed himself this week over his racist comments regarding migrant NHS workers, Streeting was defending him and agreeing with his comments on that on LBC. Keir Starmer was quick enough to sack Rebecca Long-Bailey over a tweet, was quick enough to make Nadia Whittome apologise for criticising Rishi Sunak just the other day. So why is he so weak that he cannot act to censure Wes Streeting, the man he would put in charge of mental health in government, for making these mental health slurs, apparently as a joke? Any moral high ground Starmer thinks he has coming off the back of PMQs this week is gone and then some, when he is acting just as weakly as Rishi Sunak with regards to discipline and dealing with appalling behaviour in his party. Starmer is displaying all the moral authority of Donald Trump at a beauty pageant. For as long as Wes Streeting remains in charge of a brief he is clearly woefully unfit for, how can Labour attack the Tories on such matters when the hypocrisy would be ringing in everyone's ears each time they did so? Aaron Bastani of Novara Media has called Starmer the most two-faced man in British politics, and he's absolutely right in that. And this is just one more example to add to an already long list in Starmer's not that long track record. Streeting's position is untenable. A man who claims to be passionate about the health service, yet takes private health donations and laughs at the expense of people relying on it. Well, for as long as Keir Starmer ignores his own Gavin Williamson problem and refuses to deal with Wes Streeting in the only acceptable way he can, the way he's demanded Rishi Sunak should have, by sacking him, his own position becomes all the more untenable too. Streeting's comment wasn't said in jest, it was hate speech. Keir Starmer said Sunak was too weak to sack a bully. Right now, we should all be saying the same thing of him. Otherwise, again, we can point out to everyone saying we need to get the Tories out that a vote for Starmer's Labour really isn't doing that.